talk about Lance Jackson a little bit because his brother, the Horns will be facing this week, Texarkana native Landon Jackson, and he's a really good player. Talk about Lance coming in.
Yeah, he recently got a bump up in the 24/7 Sports composite. 24/7 Sports moved him up, so that's what prompted his ranking to go up further. So he's number 33 in the composite, but that's enough. His grade is actually worthy of a fifth star. So composite 5-star. But yeah, he's ranked as a defensive lineman. I think he's probably going to be more of, an edge type when he gets to Texas. But just really disruptive, physical. He's got great burst. He's really strong, really powerful. I mean, you see what his brother does. He's a lot like that. So I think he's kind of, when you look at this Texas class top to bottom, when we look back at this class, I guess in the next few years, I think he could probably be, the guy you look back and say, man, that was kind of that was the guy from that 2025 class. And he committed in January after junior day, and he shut it down. The only visits he's gone on not to Texas or to Arkansas to see his brother. You can't fault him for that. He's going to go see him play. But he's been all Texas. He had his relationship from PK recruited him. I think if I was all right, he recruited his older brother when he was at Washington. And so Lance got to know PK really well through the whole recruiting process from before his time. And so obviously that translated over once he got to Texas with Sark. So, but no, really impressive kid. I don't have his stats pulled up. I've been doing their stats all season, but I mean, every time I do his, it's like, 9 tackles, 2 sacks a game. Like he's a force. So I think that's a big pickup for Texas. And, to get him, Smith-Orogbo, maybe get Javion Hilson in terms of your edge types. I mean, that's probably the best edge class in the country, if you ask me. So, and that's assuming, Texas can wrap it up with Javion Hilson. But even with just, a guy like with Lance Jackson, Smith-Orogbo, then, bringing them back with the other guys you have on the roster, whether, Trey Moore comes back, you got Colin Simmons coming up, Colton Vosick, Burke, all those guys. So certainly, big time player.
Hank, the how good is Elijah Barnes? Because I know the saying used to be that if you took a kid from DISD, it was going to take him a year to learn how to be a college player. Obviously, Colin Simmons doesn't fit into that category, but Elijah Barnes out of Skyline, you think he's a walk-in guy, or is he going to take a minute?
I think he could be a walk-in guy. I kind of think what he is now is what we thought Ty Anthony Smith could be in a couple of years. I don't know if that makes sense to me. But we've seen Ty Anthony Smith come in. He bought into the process. He put on weight. Now we're seeing him make interceptions against Florida, and starting to look like maybe the next big thing at the linebacker position down the road. But Elijah Barnes, he's unfortunately his season came to an end. But again, he's playing in probably the toughest district in the state. I think his final stat lines, I just posted them last night, was like 110 tackles. He had like 78 solo tackles. He had like 6 sacks, 18 tackles for a loss. He had a pick 6. He blocked an extra point. Like, he's all over the field. And so I think, especially coming in as an early enrollee, and just I think the opportunity that's going to be there at the linebacker position, I think he could be a guy maybe we see. I think the learning curve is going to be, a little bit less steep for him. So, I could see, Bo Barnes contributing early. Again, I think I compare, I think he's a more polished Ty Anthony Smith at this stage in his high school career. So, but yeah, I think big things from him for sure.
Hank, I would love to hear your opinion on the Jon Cook situation. I mean, going back to the whole recruiting process, coming out of DeSoto, wins a state championship. It seemed like he was coming to Texas not only to play for Sark, but to play with guys like Arch Manning. And you see Arch Manning waiting his turn, understanding the process, and just to see how the Jon Cook situation unfolded, and to see him now posting the A&M picks and the Oregon picks, and whatever, best luck to him. But it just seemed like this came out of left field when we heard it come out last week. Your thoughts?
Yeah. I from beginning of this year, I was talking to a source about it, and they're all the potential in the world, just had to have his head right, had to be, focused on what he needed to be focused on. And not to say, I think there's something to be said. You see some other guys start to pass you, you see the fans talking, you had that big drop against Mississippi State. Obviously that's not the reason he's leaving Texas, but I think, the guys they had coming in, they went to the portal, got all these guys this offseason. Then you have a guy like, I feel like last offseason we were all talking about DeAndre Moore probably being the guy that was going to leave. And then he's the guy that's the next star in the wide receiving corps. So you see him come up. You see the guys that get in the portal last year, the guys they have coming in, whether it be Jamie French, Khalil Lockett, and, whoever they're probably going to get a receiver or two out of the portal this time around as well. So, maybe he's – I don't know what the right word is. I think maybe he just felt like, he was getting passed over, and, he could go start somewhere new elsewhere. But no, I mean, I don't think it was totally out of left field because there's been a lot of buzz lately about what was going to happen with him. He wasn't playing. He wasn't, Chris Jackson posted that picture with all the receivers at dinner and he wasn't in the picture. I know that's like silly, but
I forgot about that.
I mean, Chris Jackson
talked about that shit, remember?
Yeah. But I mean, again, during that whole window of time where like he's not doing anything on the field, he's not getting the reps, then you post a picture and, obviously fans are going to talk, but yeah, maybe he just felt a little bit slighted and is wanted to start somewhere else. So, we'll see what happens. But I think I was talking to a friend today about this, like, if Isaiah Bond leaves, I mean, Isaiah Bond's going to be a first-round pick. If Matthew Golden leaves, Silas Bolden, you lose Jon Cook, they go from a really deep wide receiving core to, maybe they need a guy like Jamie French to come in and play earlier than expected, maybe like a Ryan Wingo, Jamie French, DeAndre Moore kind of thing next year. So I will be curious to see, that if they go in the portal. I would imagine they probably would this offseason, depending on who's available, just like they did. They had Wingo and a couple other high school kids last cycle, and they went and got 3 wide receivers in the portal. So, I would imagine Texas is going to be a really attractive destination for wide receivers too, come play a year with Arch and boost your draft stock. So, it sucks because he is a really, talented player, but it just wasn't all coming together. There wasn't, I think the only time he really flashed at Texas was, his freshman fall camp. We never really saw anything from him after that. So, best of luck to him, but we'll see where they go from there.
Hank, we got basketball signing day tomorrow, right?
Yep. I know it's crazy. There's no buzz about it. So it goes from tomorrow through the following Wednesday. So it's open 1 week. I was been checking with sources, the men's basketball side. And, I think John Clark's the only guy we're going to see sign tomorrow. It seems like the trend now is sign later. If you're, elite high school basketball player, men's and women's, I don't think we're going to see a decision from Aaliyah Chavez, at least not tomorrow. Maybe she changes her mind in the next week and makes a decision, but, just looking on both sides, I think maybe now the consensus is, take your time, maybe see what happens in the portal at these different places and then go from there. So yeah, John Clark, the Texas commit in basketball, I expect him to sign tomorrow with Texas. Probably an important point. And then Aaliyah Crump, the lone women's basketball commit, who's also, top 10 recruit in the country. She's expected to sign with Texas tomorrow as well. So we'll see if anything pops up. I have not heard of, any other names. There's one, a guy, I need to look him up. I don't know all too much about him, but Mikel Brown Jr., he's a 5-star point guard in the 2025 class. If you look into his recruitment, there's like all sorts of different schools trending. He's an Adidas kid. His AAU team is Adidas, and I think he has ties to Adidas. So, you got to think that's probably going to factor in the decision, even though he says it's not. But he's a guy Texas really likes. I don't think he's making a decision tomorrow, but, I've seen him tied to Louisville, Ole Miss. You look at his 24/7 page, it's like Kentucky, Louisville, Indiana, bunch of different schools. So if there's another guy maybe to watch during this early signing period that's not a Texas commit, maybe Mikel Brown Jr., 5-star point guard from Florida. But John Clark should sign. Kingston Flemings, the 5-star guard from San Antonio, I think he's going to take it into the spring. And a few of the other guys they hosted on official visits as well. So shouldn't be super eventful, but obviously, it'll be good to hear what, Rodney Terry says about John Clark and what Vic Schaefer says about Aaliyah Crump, because it's always fun. The coaches can't talk about the kids until they're signed. And so, once that's official, then we can kind of hear, what they think about them and hear it from them. So that's always fun on the signing day periods.